What up, friends? I was melting just last week, and today we're going to be reviewing Denzel Curry's newest album, Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. This is the fifth studio album overall by the Florida-based hip-hop artist Denzel Curry. Denzel's momentum has just been surging forward recently thanks to his previous few releases, with his 2016 album Imperial kind of starting that momentum, whereas his 2018 release Taboo kind of just surging him forward into breakout success. He's had some projects since then, but no matter what he does, Denzel just seems to be a consistently solid force in the modern hip-hop scene. He constantly takes his trap rap sound and stretches it to the point where it becomes pretty conceptual and varied, especially for the genre. This new record is Denzel at his most mature. The new sounds on here are refined and tightly put together, expressing his conscious hip-hop sounds even further, while also adding a sort of jazz rap flair to it. It's definitely a solid album, even if it does show some signs of growing pains. We start off with Melt Session number 1, and what a fantastic opener to the record. The jazzy beat and soulful background vocals are lush and intricate, and the synth and piano are also very elegant. The drums are punchy and introduced in a pretty snappy way, and Denzel just sounds smooth as hell here. The more intimate nature of this track also reflects the introspective lyrics as well, with Denzel addressing his past, trying to right his wrongs, and also showing how much he's grown as a person. I feel like the line, "I wholeheartedly understand why I need to grow even though I'm grown. If I did you wrong, I vow to make it right," expresses that perfectly. The transition into the next track, Walkin, is seamless. Like, you know you're just in for another solid Denzel album here. Speaking of, Walkin was a banger when it first released, and it's a banger now. I love the haunting intro before we head off into a spacey beat that showcases the soul of the record. It's definitely a social commentary track with Denzel sort of observing all of the chaos in the world around him and how most of it stems from these systemic structures that are trying to keep people down. The flows are smooth, and the beat switch into the more hype moments of the song was also really well done. It has a strangely hopeful energy that things will change, and you have to keep walking to reach that change. I just love the flow switch-ups and the energy of this song overall. The next track, Worst Comes to Worst, opts for a different style. This one feels a bit more classic boom bap with the bouncy beats and flows alongside a more subtly dark instrumental compared to Denzel's usual overt darkness. The record scratches are pretty fun as well, fitting the sort of open mic, public speech style delivery here. It again deals with finding hope in a world that is hostile towards you, essentially focusing on yourself so you have enough energy to take these power structures on. It's a simple tune, but it's a very soulful and effective one, I think. Going back to the more spacey sounds, John Wayne has an otherworldly beat with these chilling effects and aggressive flows. It's fitting too, as this song largely deals with the topic of police brutality and how in many of these cases it's African Americans who are unfortunately targeted. The addition of the gunshot sound effects are very powerful, and lines like "the world is darker than the integration of a Brooklyn Dodger, all I need is me, myself, and I, and also my revolver" really shows the ramifications of slavery and racism and how these ideologies still permeate many of our institutions today. The next track, The Last, though, is a bit weaker, I think. The beat is fairly similar to his more trap rap stylings in his previous records, however, it feels noticeably out of place here. The flows also feel a bit static and rigid, especially in the chorus, and the verses unfortunately aren't much better. The instrumental is dark and skeletal, but without the punch that I feel like a lot of the previous songs had. I do still appreciate the lyrics talking about many of the problems that America still faces today, like our botched handling of the pandemic and how we don't take care of our homeless population. However, I feel like the instrumental could have done a better job in backing these ideas up. Mental definitely fixes this and goes back to the very lush instrumentation though. That piano is seriously chill and fits the introspective lyrics about Denzel talking about his depression and how he tries to overcome it. The soulful background vocals and beat are an interesting contrast to the subject matter, possibly showing how Denzel merely accepts his depression, as it's pretty hard, if not impossible, to actually get rid of. This is especially prevalent when he says, "My mental state is whatever happens, happens." The Saul Williams outro also has a very warm feel that I feel like sums up this song's themes very nicely. Troubles, however, is probably my least favorite song on the record. It feels really awkward coming off of the previous song, and I don't think the beat is all that interesting, to be honest. The tone is just very out of place here, kind of ruining the vibe that the previous song was setting up. I also don't find T-Pain's verse to be all that great, having some cringy bars and delivery that just doesn't make me feel much. Even Denzel's more aggressive delivery sounds kinda weird over this very light and poppy beat. Overall, the song just really doesn't do anything for me. Now, while it's a bit of a clusterfuck in terms of features, I find Ain't No Way to be pretty enjoyable, actually. Black's hook is sci-fi as hell, and the bombastic energy of Josiah and Rico Nasty are seriously fun. It feels a bit like the Taboo sound, but with the aesthetic of this album. Jid was the highlight of this song for me personally, with very smooth flows and his usual slick cadence. Denzel also comes in seamlessly after Jid's parts, rounding out the song really well. I also think that he summed up the lyrical themes that everybody was talking about really well too, basically saying how you shouldn't let the doubts of both yourself and people around you impede your way to success. The next track, X-Wing, was so close to being really good, man. I love the beat, feeling very ethereal with its strings and twinkling keys. The verses are solid and the delivery has a very biting contrast to the beat. However, the chorus is pretty lame, and I don't think Denzel is good enough of a singer to do a hook like that. If the chorus was simply a sample or had a more rap-oriented flow, this track would have been great. It also continues the themes of the previous song, basically talking about how everybody around Denzel is jealous of his success and tries to basically pull him down or prevents him from reaching his full potential. I will say, though, that it is pretty cool to see Mac being acknowledged with the greats like Biggie and Tupac. Angelz is another excellent jazz rap oriented tune with a big piano focus. The flows are smooth and have a slight melancholic edge to them. The chorus is a much better example of what X-Wings could have been, and the line, "I could either live like Jay or die like Josh," shows how Denzel's mindset has matured, as he kind of has this sort of cautious optimism about where his life is heading. He's essentially doing the best he can because the future is uncertain. It shows a confidence with a hint of unease, and this is especially prevalent in the haunting vocals in the chorus that I mentioned earlier. The Smell of Death is a song that I just think feels unfinished. It's basically a glorified intermission, and I think that's kind of a shame because the eclectic and showy beat had a lot of potential and Denzel's flows were really fun. Sanjuro is another trap-oriented song that just feels very unfitting for the project. However, I do think the darker nature of this track is pretty cool, especially when the guitar comes in during 454's portion. Speaking of 454's portion, I really don't care for it. It kind of sounds like a guy doing his best Cardi impression, but not in the best way. It's not a bad song per se, however, it doesn't really mess with the jazzier songs on the record, but it also doesn't really mesh with the more sci-fi sounding songs on the record either. Zatoichi, again, it was a banger when it first dropped, and it's a banger now. I love the maximalist sound that this one has, from the overblown synths and beats to the constant flows. The breakbeat portions during Slow Tie's chorus are also fantastic and a great pace breaker, while also remaining true to the song's sound. It sounds synthetic, but in a compelling way, fitting for the sort of hero's journey represented in the lyrics. Those lyrics being a reference to Japanese TV character Zatoichi. You can definitely hear the sort of Japanese soundtrack film score sound on this track's instrumental, and I think the lyrics about Denzel almost trying to become like Zatoichi fit this sound well. I'm glad the album ends on a jazzier note to round out the album with the ills. It almost feels like the end of a movie or something, like the one alluded to with Walkin and Zatoichi. The scratching and samples were very cleanly added, and Denzel's vocals have a punch that is pretty interesting over this very lush beat. That chorus is catchy as hell, almost having like a Danny Brown sound to me, and I just love the vibe of this track, to be honest. It sums up Denzel's maturity and newfound ways of expressing himself, which coincidentally also sums up the themes of the record. Denzel's transition into a new sound was overall done really well. It showcases a good assortment of jazz rap inspired tunes while also having a sci-fi edge like with the two singles Walkin and Zatoichi. The lyrics definitely make it a point to express this newfound maturity, and I think it comes across pretty well for the most part. Denzel's as aggressive as he's always been, but he's channeling it in a way that leads him to be more in-depth on what he's talking about. Now, while the theming of the record tends to be pretty concise, I find the instrumentals to be a bit less so. It seems like he still struggles a bit to completely let go of his trap rap sound, leading to some songs sounding a bit underwhelming compared to the more lush and intricate instrumentals on here. It just ends up feeling like Denzel not being able to fully commit to these new ideas. It's another solid release for him, but if he pushed it a bit further, it could have been even better. I'm feeling a light 8 on Denzel Curry's newest album. Now, of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and I think this is a pretty great album cover, actually. Going back to the Danny Brown, comparisons. I actually think this does seem like something that Danny Brown would play with. The sort of messed up, blurry imagery mixed with the very cool blues and greens and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty cool, pretty interesting combination. It does have a hint of warmth to it with the fuzziness of the image and the grain and stuff like that, which I think is pretty cool. But overall, I think the color combination and just general vibe here fits the sort of spacey and loungy aesthetic of the record. So I think it's a pretty good album cover. But those were just my thoughts on this newest album by Denzel Curry. What did you guys think? Do you think this is his best album yet? Or does he still need a bit more time to fully commit to his newfound aesthetic? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you too are from another world. And until the next one, farewell.